Hi, my name is John Foran, and I'd like to welcome you to this whole conference called Activists, Artists, and Academics, Building Just Climate Futures Together, which we're very happy to be hosting and having you with us. I'd also like to welcome you to this particular part of the conference, which consists of several panels on the problems and prospects of the global climate justice movement in the age of crisis. My talk today is called "The Global Climate Justice Movement Must Gear Up for Taking Political Power." And what I want to invite us to discuss is what may be the movement's biggest task: crafting ways and means for it to actually take power across the world, so that the desires of the vast majority of the world's residents, including the non-human creatures among us, can be the benchmark against which we measure our chances for arriving in mid-century in a world characterized not by multiple crises of global inequality, political disenchantment, and cultures of violence, but rather in a world beyond capitalism itself, as utopian as that may sound, even as the climate continues to deteriorate around us and to threaten the very basis of humanity's existence. I believe in my heart that this is possible, desirable, and really should be what we aim for. Of course, how do we do this? Let me start with two observations. First, I don't know. Secondly, in fact, no one knows. But it is possible, though, that all of us could do it or contribute to doing it. And my hope is that the talks at this conference and our conversations will stimulate a global conversation, a conversation that we need to have everywhere we go. Having said that, I'm going to start with a long, I warn you, very long, and evocative passage from John Holloway's brilliant 2009 book called Capitalism. What I'm about to read, and it will take several minutes of this precious time, is, to my mind, one of the most beautiful, revolutionary passages in the annals of radical thought. Simultaneously radical manifesto, theory, method, strategy, and vision. It needs to be read out loud since it's a kind of poetry or free verse. There's nothing special about being an anti-capitalist revolutionary. This is the story of many, many people, of millions, perhaps billions. It is the story of the composer in London who expresses his anger and his dream of a better society through the music he composes. It is the story of the gardener in Cholula who creates a garden to struggle against the destruction of nature. Of the car worker in Birmingham who goes in the evening to his garden allotment so that he has some activity that has meaning and pleasure for him. Of the indigenous peasants in Oventic, Chiapas, who create an autonomous space of self-government and defend it every day against the paramilitaries who harass them. Of the university professor in Athens who creates a seminar outside the university framework for the promotion of critical thought. Of the book publisher in Barcelona who centers his activity on publishing books against capitalism. Of the friends in Porto Alegre who form a choir just because they enjoy singing. Of the teachers in Puebla who confront police oppression to fight for a different type of school, a different type of education. Of the theater director in Vienna who decides she will use her skills to open a different world to those who see her plays. Of the call center worker in Sydney who fills all his vacant moments thinking of how to fight for a better society. Of the people of Cochabamba who come together and fight a battle against the government and the army so that water should not be privatized, but subject to their own control. Of the nurse in Seoul who does everything possible to help her patients. Of the workers in Neuquén who occupy the factory and make it theirs. Of the student in New York who decides that university is a time for questioning the world. Of the young man in Mexico City who, incensed by the brutality of capitalism goes to the jungle to organize armed struggle to change the world. Of the retired teacher in Berlin who devotes her life to the struggle against capitalist globalization. Of the government worker in Nairobi who gives all her free time to the struggle against AIDS. Of the university teacher in Leeds who uses the space that still exists in some universities to set up a course on activism and social change. Of the old man living in an ugly block of flats on the outskirts of Beirut who cultivates plants on his windowsill as a revolt against the concrete that surrounds him. Of the young woman in Ljubljana, the young man in Florence who, like so many others throughout the world, throw their lives into inventing new forms of struggle for a better world. Of the peasant in Huezotingo who refuses to allow his small orchard to be annexed to a massive park of unsold cars. Of the group of homeless friends in Rome who occupy a vacant house and refuse to pay rent. Of the enthusiast in Buenos Aires who devotes all his great energies to opening new perspectives for a different world. Of the girl in Tokyo who says she will not go to work today and goes to sit in the park with her book, this book, or some other. Of the young man in France who devotes himself to building dry toilets as a contribution to radically altering the relation between humans and nature. Of the telephone engineer in Jalapa who leaves his job to spend more time with his children. Of the woman in Edinburgh who in everything she does expresses her rage through the creation of a world of love and mutual support. John Holloway is reminding us that ordinary people are revolutionaries today, as they were yesterday, and will be again for 1,000 tomorrows. This is a simple, profound truth that contains within it the critique of all vanguards, hierarchies, and exclusions. In other words, he writes, social change is not produced by activists, however important activism may or may not be in the process. Social change is rather the outcome of the barely visible transformation of the daily activities of millions of people. And I believe that there is indeed an affinity in the sense of a connection, a thread, an affection between the people in the streets of Paris in May 1968, in the Zapatista communities, in the streets again of Seattle in 1999, in many places in 2011, and in countless locations today, this very day, who are finding ways to make the cracks in the system that will open paths to the climate justice we are seeking in this movement. Let me ask again, but how do we do this? We may not have found our way yet, but there are many promising ideas, some of them from people who have talks in this conference, and others from people I hope might participate in the discussion. And here is my decaf coffee, which I need right now. For example, Patrick Bond wants us to boycott Trump and his billionaire allies in government and the corporations that are directly responsible for the constellation of crises we face today. Jeremy Brecker has written of a climate insurgency led by communities who use the doctrine of the commons to take back our planet from the 1% who have stolen and pillaged it. Ezra and Anya and Margaret of the climate mobilization have called for a World War II-style mobilization of government and communities to reduce the emissions, especially here in the United States, ground zero for climate change, that are killing our future. Tom Athanasiou and Eco-Equity have plans to bring economic justice to the transition. From the Global South comes the vision of Buen Vivir, of living the right way, where all our most important human needs are met communally and with the rights of Mother Earth at the center of our lives. Everywhere, we see what Naomi Klein and others have called blockadia, people, many of them young, poor, marginalized in all kinds of ways, coming together resolutely to stop the fossil fuel industry, the industrial agriculture, and all destroyers of forests and land and waters in the name of our children's children. The kids who are suing the government here in the United States for stealing their futures, who know better than the adults that we share. We don't hurt each other. We talk when we disagree. We remember to play because we love life itself. The divestment movement, Standing Rock, Black Lives Matter, the fights for a just income and the right to immigrate and not be deported for trying to survive and contribute to society. Transition towns, degrowth, commoning, alternative agriculture, building, transportation, and system changes of all kinds. There are climate warriors everywhere, and our numbers are growing as the system breaks down all around us. And still, it's not enough. We need more people, better ideas, more joy, more awareness. And we don't have a lot of time. So then, let me add one more idea, one that comes out of a long study of the great social revolutions of the 20th century and of the great new movements for radical social transformation in this century, which I find so hopeful. First, we need to learn the art of building powerful political cultures that sustain both our resistance to the way things are going in this world and nurture our imagination to create the worlds we want to live in. The success of social movements has always depended on the shared strength of people's political cultures of opposition and creation, attracting others into the struggle, who in turn bring their gifts to it. So as many people know and have said, it's simple, to build the biggest and the most radical global social movement in the history of the world, in order to force change on the ruthless corporations and the craven politicians who stand in our way. And if it isn't clear now or yet, we are building a future without this system, without capitalism, without endless growth, without obscene inequality, without the violence of militarism, and with democratic participation from bottom to top and back to the bottom. So here's what I've learned from looking at as many cases as I could and from joining wholeheartedly in the most hopeful radical movement I've ever discovered, the global climate justice movement. We're going to have to leverage the strength and power and beauty of our many movements and ideas into some new kind of entity. Call it a completely new kind of party, if you want, that can take political power away from those who hold it, in place after place, and find the pathways to the future we want. And this new entity that comes out of our movements must be made to do all of this by us. I could have spent the whole talk on how we might do this, but let's instead start a conversation about it, share our ideas and dreams and our reservations, and see what we can come to as we move forward. I'd like to end with a passage I wrote at the end of the essay on John Holloway back in 2010 that states the basic idea here. There are many paths to a better future, one worthy of us and for our children. And depending on the situations that people face wherever they are, it should be no surprise that there will be different paths to the flowering of elected radicals from above, pushed by uncompromising radical movements from below, or perhaps the other way around. These, to me, seem the best ways forward. Thank you.